open up the basement?
Can they hear it? I don't know.
Yeah, they can hear down
Can they
there.
go downstairs? Yeah, see, we're not set up for it tonight, so we didn't know that we would have
we
this
just
big
open it,
crowd.
then?
Yeah, well,
That's some heavy duty.
oh, okay.
But
Oh,
think
Al's
about
trying to
it.
get through.
The legislative staff should have been reading this stuff.
I-
Now,
Oh, Al
they
just
think
made
they're
it.
wrong. What can we do?
I poured you a glass of water. I'm like, well, I hope he's coming. My standard is to pour you a glass of water.
No, if anything, I was just I was parked.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Oh, my God.
I worked in front today.
Well, when Ingrid's done, I'll bring up planning and zoning
Okay.
before
It's not yours.
before citizens.
Planning and zoning.
Okay.
All right, and then that way. Ingrid,
Not that that matters.
I was going to, after, when you're done, I thought we would have planning and zoning report. Oh, and then do citizen
Are
comments.
you doing anything about Frank?
That we just got.
Okay.
So then there's really not much.
There's some interesting things to report.
Okay, yeah. And then Mike is going to comment on
Oh, yeah.
lawsuits in other states and so forth, so.
Oh, they did, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to say something, please do.
Okay. Yeah. I'll figure it out.
You're gonna, so Ingrid's gonna send it to you then? Okay. Oh, we're late. We don't like to be late.
Well,
Everybody
people
can
are
hear
still
it.
When he
filing
walks
in,
in,
you
he's
know.
gonna be like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think this is the fullest I've seen this room in the last 6 years. So thank you for attending tonight's meeting. I can't hear me.
Mike's on.
Dan, are we good?
Yeah, we are. All right, there we go.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to your Board of Trustees' first January meeting, 2020. To honor our nation's heroes and especially to honor the men and women in uniform who serve and protect our community, please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Clerk Horvath, may we have the roll call, please?
Yes, Madam President. Trustee Rudolph.
Here.
Trustee Sifferman.
Here.
Trustee Terrell.
Here.
Trustee Chen.
Here.
Trustee Fink.
Here.
And Trustee John.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Are there any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to the citizen comment portion of the meeting. This is when we open it up to the public if they would like to address the board. But before we do that, I do want to clear the air because there's been a little bit of misinformation circulating regarding 5G. Hopefully by now everyone knows that the email that went out to all Forest Hills PTA members regarding 5G and Verizon permit applications was not true. To avoid the spread of false rumors in the future, please verify any information you find concerning that does not come directly from the village. If you receive an email from an organization other than the village, please contact the village before assuming it's true. The board and staff are doing what we can within the laws and regulations imposed upon us. So far, staff and legal counsel have effectively stalled the permit application process. The members of the board are your neighbors. We all are residents. We all want what is best for Western Springs, for our community, and for our residents. And we also are frustrated by the lack of regulatory control. We appreciate the concern many residents have voiced. We are at the forefront of this issue. We were early on, and we will continue to be at the forefront as we act in the best interests of the village moving forward. Manager Velkme, would you like to add any words?
Yes, thank you, President Gallagher. The village has been contacted by several telecommunications providers with regard to 5G in recent months. While some providers have shared preliminary site maps to illustrate tentatively proposed sites, to date, only one formal request has been submitted. That was from Crown Castle. A formal permit application was submitted by them and it was shared with the public, and it was withdrawn following the village's denial of the permit based on an incomplete application. That letter is also online, so you can take a look at that also. I also spoke to our legislative representatives, their offices, their liaisons. They do go back into session on January 28th. And on that day, then maybe we can start talking to them about whether or not there will be some hearings, maybe downstate, on this issue. To date, I have no information on that, but September 28th is when why do I say that? January 28th is when they will be going then. Also, we have heard about some other lawsuits that have been filed in other states by municipalities or COGS or so forth. And I would like Attorney Jarusic to comment on that and how that would work in Illinois.
Yeah, very briefly, because we're not going to try a case here today. We're not going to settle it today, right? We're aware of all the lawsuits that are pending around the country. There's only a handful, a couple of them that people have pointed to. There's one in Florida. Florida has a different deployment act. Florida is also a very unique municipal state. Florida municipalities have proprietary rights in their rights of way. It's a total different animal than what we have to work with here in Illinois. So that platform or that lawsuit that's pending in Florida does not really serve as a good pathway for us to follow. Some of the arguments you could raise here in Illinois, most of them would not be effective. There is a case in the Ninth Circuit that's pending, a federal piece of legislation that we're keeping an eye on. But I can tell you this, that, the 5G companies, the telecom companies, invested a significant amount of money in lobbying and legislating both at the federal and the state level across all 50 states. The legislative schemes that were passed and left local municipalities, in particular in Illinois, with very little regulatory control. We have, under our Deployment Act, basically limited regulatory parameters to approve equipment, and we have really limited ability to approve aesthetics. We are prohibited by FCC regulations from relying on things such as radio frequency emissions to make any type of application decision, any type of location siting decisions. We are vigilant. We are looking, my firm in particular represents a number of communities around the state, and we are taking the lead on this. We are looking at every avenue. When you look at the materials that are on our village's website, this village has been ahead of the curve on this across the board, in large part because of our efforts. Our denial letter is a template for all municipalities around the state. And I will say this, we have a very good Illinois Municipal League. It's an excellent organization, very proactive, but even in the face of this type of legislation, they took a neutral position on the legislation early on, and we just met with their legal counsel last week, and they do not anticipate, getting involved or pushing litigation in cooperation with local municipalities on this issue. The Florida case, one of the residents, provided that to us. We were aware of that. Their municipal league jumped into and sponsored and promoted that litigation in Florida. The ironic thing is only a handful of cities in Florida jumped on that litigation. Many times, half the municipalities in the state are for this 5G, half the municipalities are against. It's a split, because some communities, just like the city of Chicago, got exempted from our Deployment Act and got its own special opportunities. They want 5G. City of Chicago wants 5G because they want the speed. They want their businesses to benefit from that. They want the benefits of 5G. The rest of the municipalities around the state, we were carved out and are subject to these more onerous restrictions that we have to deal with. So I will continue, my firm, we will continue to work with staff and other communities that we represent to evaluate all options. But what I can tell you is litigation is an uphill battle, given the way it's a two-track process. You have to fight the state litigation and you have to fight the FCC regulations. That's an uphill battle, given the way the deck is cast, and given the way that the politics work. The most effective, direct way of fighting this is dealing with your state legislatures and your federal legislators. That's where you're going to get the most direct, effective, and prompt response and movement in this area. Those are my comments for now.
Thank you, Mike. We'll now open it up to public comment if anyone would like to address the board. But I do ask that you keep your comments limited to the 3 minutes with regard to our public comment guidelines. As you see, we have a lot of people here. I'd like everyone to have an opportunity to speak to the board. And we also have a very full agenda of other items to get to. Manager?
President Gallagher, could I please just mention one other thing? We understand that there were some poles, utility poles that were dropped off in the Forest Hills area, and Director Scott, he went out to take a look at that. We believe those are ComEd poles. There are some stakes also out there. We are trying to verify who actually put those there, for what reason. There haven't been any Julie locates requested for that area just yet, so we don't know at this point on the stakes. So, but I just wanted to mention that. So.
Thank you. And I'd also like to ask that that you comment, if you have a comment, if you have something different to say than someone prior, please approach the board. Otherwise, if what you have to say is similar to what other people have said, please know that the board has heard that and understood. So thank you, ma'am, for your patience. Please come on.
Members of the board, President Gallagher, thank you so much for the opportunity. We're actually several speakers covering different aspects of 5G.
May we have your name, please?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
My name is Moira Zellner. I'm a
Oh, hi,
resident. I'm a resident of Western Springs. Is there a microphone? No.
It
Right
should
there.
be embedded in the podium. It's on. Yeah, it's on. Just go ahead and speak.
Okay. So I live in Western Springs, and I have a PhD in urban technological and environmental planning. That's my job. I'm affiliated to a major research university in the region. And I represent here myself as a resident, but also a scientist whose work informs policy. And I wanted to raise a few things that concern me regarding the 5G rollout. Scientists are trying to search out factual, peer-reviewed information. Reputable scientists don't need to make derogatory remarks to prove a scientific point. The public is raising a valid concern, but the industry and those who support it ridicule these concerns with the argument that we can't prove that 5G technology is unsafe. Uncertainty is co-opted to support one side of the argument, but not the other. Uncertainty, however, goes both ways. The industry cannot in any way prove that 5G radiation is safe or even how beneficial it is to society. 5G clearly benefits the industry. That is the only thing we can say with certainty. The question is, what do we prefer to be wrong about? That this technology is safe when it isn't, or that it isn't safe when it is? We're all saying we prefer the latter. President Gallagher, you said in an interview with the Chicago Tribune last November, we want to be cautious. The precautionary principle embodies that idea. It's the principle that the introduction of a new product or process whose ultimate effects are disputed or unknown should be resisted. Precautionary principles aside, the balance of evidence leans heavily towards harm. In the letter from the village president to legislators, President Gallagher stated that we have done some research on our end to identify potential risks, but have not found reliable data that answers a specific question. Will the mass implementation of small cell wireless facilities in residential neighborhoods be harmful to the public? This couldn't be farther from the truth. There is a sizable number of peer-reviewed studies showing 5G radiation is harmful to all life, not just humans. There are also actual cases showing the link between radiation and a host of health issues, many of them life-threatening. Very few studies support the contrary, and many of them are funded by the industry with clear conflicts of interest. We ask that you engage the lobbyists already hired by the village and paid for with our taxes to engage in amending current legislation to give power back to local government. We ask that you go to court in our name to challenge the constitutionality of the current law that took power away from local government. We ask that you join neighboring communities who are spending resources to address this problem. We're not against the industry or against progress, quite the contrary. Industry is a major source of the innovation that we all want, but not at the expense of our health and well-being. Industry needs checks and balances much like government does. True progress comes from technological innovation that is safe, clean, and provides a true service to society, benefiting us all. Thank you for your attention and for the actions you're taking to protect our interests.
Thank you, Ms. Elmer.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Jack Stanley. I'm a resident. I'm not a PhD, unfortunately. I have a list of questions from residents, and rather than get into Q&A, I'll submit them to the board, and we respectfully ask that we get a response back within 10 days from you.
Very
So,
good.
Here, I can give that to you too. First one, we're grateful for the letters that you've sent on behalf of the residents to the legislators and public officials, making them aware of our concerns. We'd like to know what additional steps has the village taken to address these concerns. In particular, we're interested in any action to return authority to the local government for approval of 5G installation. We asked in December that the village hire a lobbyist to help us in Springfield, collaborating with other lobbyists such as with Hinsdale, hired by neighboring communities. Can you inform us of the steps that have been taken in this regard? Second question, has the village president or trustees done their own independent research on the safety of 5G radiation? What evidence is the village government relying on to address our concerns? And can you share any peer-reviewed research that wasn't funded by the telecom industry to prove the safety of 5G radiation? The third one is, kind of trim this down a little bit. Some of these things you guys have touched on in your opening statements, so I apologize. But regarding the stakes that have been going up around town, we've only received the one application, you said, right? So
Yes, and they
who's
withdrew their.
putting all these stakes up that we're starting to see pop up? So I find that odd that somebody's putting stakes out on village property and we don't know who's doing it. I think that needs to be addressed. You mentioned in your opening statements that you're aware of all the lawsuits going on nationally. Are we actually engaging these people, consulting with them, or are we just monitoring what's going on and using that as a roadmap to how we're approaching this? What meetings has any of our village representatives and or employees had with the telecom industry? Who was present and what was discussed? Have any of these discussions included potential health effects of 5G technology? And the final one is President Gallagher. You've been appointed to serve on the board of directors of the Illinois Toll Highway Authority. How is your role? How are you representing our concerns in this board, given the links between 5G technology and the efforts underway in the tollway system to accommodate for autonomous vehicles and other smart technology? So, we appreciate if you get responses to these, and there's an email that you can respond to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Weller Murphy, and I confidently speak on behalf of my generation. President Gallagher, in one of your emails sent to a resident from our town that was obtained under the Freedom of Information Act from October 2019, you specifically state, "But I have looked into safety concerns and can find no scientific data that either supports or refutes the claim of adverse health impacts from these small cell towers. If it is unclear on the health effects, why are you erring on the side of let's take a risk with the health of everyone's children, like me? I am asking all of you to hire a lobbyist, not one only to monitor, but one to advocate for the changes in both federal and state laws. 2, fight this in court by challenging the constitutionality. And 3, attend the meeting this Wednesday at the Community House in Hinsdale at 7 p.m. I hope to see you there."
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pam Conlon. I have a letter I'd like to read from Heidi Hansen, who couldn't be here this evening, and pass it on. So this letter is from Heidi Hansen. She is unable to be here this evening and wanted this put into the record. So it begins, I, Heidi, studied science at University of Illinois, Urbana, and worked briefly for the Department of Defense. After I graduated from law school, I worked for the Illinois EPA and later was a partner at a firm before I launched my own firm. I have been practicing environmental law for over 40 years. I am not representing anyone with regard to 5G, and I do not want to. For personal reasons, I cannot take this on. However, I can give you the benefit of my thinking based on 4 decades of experience. I understand that the village is reluctant to spend money on this issue, but I believe that it will be more costly if the village does not act now. In one study, when the sale price of homes near cell towers was compared to homes distant from towers, the nearby homes lost 21% in value. Consider what that means for Western Springs. Pity the poor homeowner who tries to sell a house near a transmitter. The median house value here is $500,000. 20% of that equals a potential loss of $100,000. The houses next door will probably lose some of their value too. There is something horribly unfair about the fact that a telecom company gets to pick and choose whose house will lose value. Think what happens to the tax base as people appeal their property taxes based on lowered comparables or the actual realized loss in value when a house is sold. The village will lose property tax revenue, the schools will lose revenue, our services will be cut back, our taxes will be raised. This 5G rollout can financially harm everyone in the village. So what do we do from here? First, the village needs the services of a lobbyist, not to monitor the legislation, but to act proactively as an advocate. It is always cheaper to share expenses. I don't understand what is keeping the village from forming an alliance with other municipalities that are being threatened, like Hinsdale and Clarendon Hills. The residents are working together across municipal borders to protect ourselves and our families. The village's governments should be also. Second, the village is not helpless. Illinois has strong environmental laws. SB 1451 may stop you from regulating transmitters, but it does not stop you from using the courts to protect your citizens. Illinois Constitution Article 11 guarantees Illinois residents the right to a healthful environment. Illinois common law allows plaintiffs to sue to stop a prospective nuisance. Whatever company placed flags throughout Western Springs last week may have just made itself vulnerable to suit under common law. Illinois Environmental Protection Act, Section 9A, also used in Sterogenics, prohibits air pollution. And the definition of air pollution includes any form of energy, like radiation, that is injurious to human, plant, or animal life in health or property. Once the board authorizes council to proceed on this issue, they can advise the board on these and the many other legal theories and strategies that can be used to protect us. But I urge the board to do this quickly in order to give your council time to prepare. Third, the village could contact all of the telecom companies active in the area and meet with them together at an executive level to see whether a technical solution is possible. This could involve a fully wired fiber optic village or possibly directional transmitters aimed away from residences. I am asking the board to put 5G on the agenda again for its next meeting and also to amend its ordinance to require that any new applications include proof that they have been served on the homeowners within 250 feet of the location of any proposed small cell wireless facilities. I also want to thank the village for the thorough job it did in analyzing the recent permit application. Last, for the sake of full disclosure, you should know that I currently hold several hundred shares of Verizon stock, which I am in the process of selling. After what I have learned in my research on how Verizon is handling this rollout, I no longer consider it to be a good investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board this evening? Mr. Vespa.
Hi. I only have one 5G item and two non-5G items.
Okay.
My first one is I don't know the source of the map, but I think it may have even been referenced that there was a map put out that was showing potential 5G hotspot locations. I don't know the source of it, but I guess my question is that will the village make available, should a petition or request come in to be able to distribute 5G, that a map will be made public without a FOIA request on the 5G portion of the village website, so that way residents can see layovers of where different companies may be planning to put their transmitters, should it come to that. My second one is I wanted to thank the village for this past weekend on being proactive with the coming rain and actually going around and picking up leaves by drains. While my street flooded once again, I wasn't outside at 11:30 at night taking leaves out of the sewer so water could flow. So thank you for that. But third, along with that, we have a consistent challenge, at least in Ridgewood, where the village comes around with hot asphalt to do patching on a lot of the streets. And the challenge is that while the crews do their best to do the patching, my sole opinion, without being an expert, is that it's not compressed enough. So the first time we get snow and the plows come, it's completely taken up and we're back to having the holes in the road again. So wanted to see after the winter time, we get into spring and such, if another approach can be taken so that when the village puts the asphalt down to fill that, it can more permanently stay and not be taken up at the first time winter comes, because we've had it happen again on our block, and water gets in there, ice forms, it becomes a hazard for people walking and slipping when the ice is below the main street level.
Right.
So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vespa. Measure
With
Vespa?
regard to that, I know that we had some problems in Ridgewood this year because of the weather. When it was raining so much, we just couldn't get enough dry weather, so that could be that it's coming up. But we tried as best as possible.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board this evening? Good evening.
Good evening, Rick Murphy. I'm a resident of the town. I've sent quite a bit of emails lately. Haven't gotten any responses, except from village attorney. Thank you, Michael. So my question is relative to the application being withdrawn, and stakes being continuously put up around town and markings being put up around town that we don't know where they're coming from. My question is, has anyone from Crown Castle or any of their representatives reached out via email or by telephone to talk about the application that was denied and what they were doing going forward? Were there any agreements made with Crown Castle in anticipation of this meeting, knowing that 5G would be on the agenda to withdraw that application?
No.
Is that no for both?
That's no, there were no meetings or no agreements to withdraw the application prior to this meeting. We hold meetings pretty much every other week. There was no timing issue with that withdrawal. They withdrew after we rejected their application.
Director Scott, I believe, did you have any conversations or so?
Or a conversation with the gentleman who sent back an email telling us that they were withdrawing. It was had last week, and his indication was that they did not realize that the location that they chose was not on a public piece of property, that it was private, and that they made that mistake, and that they would come back sometime in the future. No other details, nothing else. That was just a mistake. No discussion about this meeting, it being on the agenda. That was it.
And just on behalf of my office, we've had no contact with Crown Castle whatsoever, or any of their representatives. All our dealings have been through staff and through the materials that we produced. And then just another point, there was a comment that the village had violated the Open Meetings Act, or there was a suggestion that we, might be violating the Open Meetings Act, and somebody, I'm not accusing you, but I just want everybody to know no, we're not gonna have any violations of the Open Meetings Act. Everything on this issue, everything that this village board deals with is gonna be open, transparent. It's gonna be done in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. Read the book that I wrote. I'm not gonna have my, reputation, tossed down the tubes because, we're not gonna comply with something as easy as the Open Meetings Act, which is transparency in government. And so I just wanna assure you that, whatever information the village is able to get on this, we have a website up and running, and we're posting things to be as transparent as possible. That map that was produced in part of a FOIA request was not distributed to this board. It came in attached to an email, and it wasn't part of an application. It wasn't part of anything that was moving forward, so it wasn't shared with the board members here. It stopped at staff level because it was deemed to be a draft. And the way it was phrased, it actually could have been exempted from the, open media or the FOIA, law, but, we produced it because there's nothing to hide. That map also impacts, our neighbors to the west. If you look at it, there's a significant number of polls, at least identified, for those communities, much more than this community. And we will share with you, information as we get it. We're not looking to hide things or sandbag people. We're here. We're, as the mayor said, we're residents. We're in this together. There is an active group of multiple municipalities in this region that meet. Some of the attorneys from my office, have been working with staff and the managers, to help, navigate these waters, and we're going to continue to do that. And like I said, we'll evaluate all options, in order to move forward and to deal with this.
And I appreciate your
Yep.
response, it's very interesting. What you stated, will that also apply to Matt Supert and Martha Scott as far as transparency? Do you
Yes.
expect the same from them?
Yes,
So when
yes.
they're asked in front of a group of people, has there been an application, and the response is no, and then they play semantics, said, well, it really wasn't officially put in, but we did get an email saying that we're gonna put it in. You would expect them to say, yeah, that there was an email saying that they were gonna put it in.
Well, if they were asked whether an application was filed and it hadn't been filed yet, then did they give you a correct answer? I can't speak that, but we will post every filed application that we receive on the website, like we've said, and we will post our responses, in a timely manner so you can see how they're dealt with. We are going to be transparent on this issue.
And one last thing, you referenced the map with the poles on it. I'm the one that sent the FOIA request, as you
Correct.
know. That map was attached to an email asking Matt Supert if he was quote-unquote okay with the pole locations. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
You remember seeing that?
Yes.
Okay, so the follow-up is the town having their input in the actual locations? Is
At
Matthew
this-
Supert
yeah,
saying,
yeah.
yeah, put it in front of that house, not in front of that house? Is that how this is going down?
That is not how it's going to work. Staff will evaluate on an application by application process all poll locations that are requested in the future.
When we receive a formal application,
Correct.
if and when.
So they should, based on the law though, Verizon shouldn't be asking the village, based on
No,
my reading.
and we
Would-
can't
would-
control what Verizon provides to us, and we can't control what they ask of us. There's a process. We adopted an ordinance consistent with state law to provide, process, a due process, and an application approval process, and that's going to be followed, and that has been followed to date.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board this evening? Good evening.
Hi, my name is Beth Walsh. I'm a resident. I live on Rose Avenue. I wasn't planning on talking tonight. However, probably 5 to 7 years ago, I wanted to get a stop sign put in at the corner, which I did do. But I had to come before the board at least 3 or 4 times to get a stop sign put in an unprotected intersection. So I really don't understand how you guys don't know who's placing poles in our woods. I have one on my corner. And I also live on a street where all of our utilities are behind our house. So aesthetically, there is nothing on our street. But now I see a pole in front of somebody's house on my street. And again, I don't understand how you guys don't know. For me to get a stop sign put in, a block and a half from the school, in an unprotected intersection, I had to come before this board at least 3 times. Somebody couldn't make an executive decision to place a stop sign. But
No.
somebody's traveling around this town and deciding where to put poles for something that is, you're saying you don't know who it is. And again, I wasn't planning on talking, but I
Right.
cannot believe that you guys don't know who is driving around town.
Okay. Marty get back to that? Should Marty address that? Yeah, yeah, yes.
I think I said earlier that we did check the poles that some people were talking about. Those are utility poles from ComEd. The stake, that's a difference. When you're talking about a pole, that's different than a stake. A stake is something that, Marty, you want to
Sure.
address that?
Sure, and as Manager Velkman was saying, the poles that are on the ground that are stored on the ground.
We're talking about the stakes, the wooden stakes that are marking the 5G.
Okay. Okay. No, that's okay. That's okay. I know what they look like. I was just differentiating. I understand, and I appreciate that. That's fine. What I was just saying is the poles that are in the.
Can those be removed then, since we don't know who's putting them out? I mean, if we don't know who's putting them out, we should be removing them.
Yeah.
I can't say yes or no to that. So.
Yeah. Just to clarify my point that I was trying to make here is the poles that I've seen in Forest Hills. I'm sorry, ma'am. I gave you the minute to speak. If you could just let me finish. I'm not trying to be adversarial. Okay. Okay. Thanks, if you don't mind. So these poles that are out there that are stored in front yards, that's a common, not very pleasingly looking way to store them, but they have ComEd tags on the bottom. Or Exelon on them. That's a common practice. I tried getting a hold of our ComEd governmental affairs rep today just to say, confirm for me that the intention of those is replacing older ComEd poles with no 5G or small cell application intended. I have not heard back from him other than saying, I'll get back to you tomorrow or as soon as I can. So just on that issue alone, that's all I'm gonna say. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Hi, Colleen Paps. I'm a resident here, and on Friday, I came home after being told that the application was withdrawn to find a utility person on my property in front of a Verizon truck with a yellow vest on, placing one of these white stakes with the mark Julie spray painted into the lawn with coordinates, so obviously requesting Julie to Julie the action. And I asked the woman, who are you with? And she said, Verizon. And you have pictures of the truck. She took pictures of the truck they were placing the stakes, and it was a Verizon truck. So
No.
I'm going to ask someone who's on my property who they're with. And I
Right.
believe I have that right, but I agree with Beth. We have to know who's making these markings and who's putting these stakes down. If you look on the 5G Facebook page, someone did the due diligence to drive around town and mark all of those white stakes. They match up identically to the email that Marty Scott got, asking if he was okay with the locations. So, once again, I'm with Beth. We have to know who's on our property and why is Verizon allowed to place these stakes when there is no current permit or application on file.
Right, that's a good question. We'll get to the bottom of it. We'll get an answer for that. It's a very good question. Anyone else? James?
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, no, Nancy, you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Nancy Perlman. I'm from Glen Ellen. I know I've been here before.
Yes.
I test and affirm that the following statements are true, accurate, and within my personal knowledge. Thank you for taking your local authority back by telling Crown Castle its application for wireless telecommunications facility, WTF, was incomplete. As a result, they withdrew their application. The 5G rollout, if allowed, entails placing, constructing, and operating additional WTFs, misleadingly called small cells. These can produce as much hazardous pulsed microwave radiation as do macro cell towers. The 20-inch waves penetrate deeply into humans and animals, especially babies and small children. The 2-inch to 4-inch waves target the primary organs such as the brain, heart, lungs, and genitalia. The millimeter waves target eyes, ears, and skin. These are the lengths of insect antennas, ensuring the extermination of pollinating insects. Many officials have stated their hands are tied by federal and state laws. That's not true. There are two new important judicial decisions. August 2019, the NEPA review case, as I know you're familiar with, all WTF applications are incomplete until an environmental impact statement is submitted. October 2019, FCC no longer regulates internet data, so preemption no longer exists. FCC only regulates voice transmissions. Every community can utilize mandated NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, requiring an environmental assessment, EA, or environmental impact statement, EI, for every single WTF application. Our communities need to work together to stop all placement, construction, modification, and operations of new, recent, and applied for WTFs. The required EAs or EIs must include negative health consequences. Let's have no more WTFs where people sleep, live, and heal. Finally, fiber optic cables already in place were financed with public money. They reside in public conduit, in or on poles in the public rights of way, and cannot lawfully be claimed or used by unregulated private wireless companies as if they were private property proposed for private profit. Consider what San Leandro, California did. They installed fiber optic cable throughout their city in order to provide wired connections. Check out the Lisandro.com, I have that on the sheet there. I've expressed no concern or any other non-substantive matter, but solely matters of fact and law. I appreciate your oath of office. Thank you.
Thank you. Good
Hi,
evening.
James Holderman. I live on Harvey in Western Springs. I promised my wife that I wouldn't come up and speak tonight, so I'm going to have to beg her forgiveness when I get home. I have got probably over 1,500 hours of study on radio frequency radiation. ComEd knows my name. I am going to release ComEd's answers with regard to how they view radio frequency radiation to anyone who wants this in this room. I told President Gallagher, who has been very gracious in meeting with me, when I moved into town, that if I have a pole, a ComEd pole, a utility pole in my backyard, and I said, if Telecom tries to put an antenna on that pole, it will be war. I would recommend that every single citizen, resident of Western Springs, take that attitude. I have 1,500 hours on this. I have 2 little kids. I'm going to defend my family, and I would hope that my village board will help me do so. Thank you.
Anyone else? Would anyone else like to address the board this evening?
Hi,
Hi.
Laura Murphy. I'm getting tired of the Murphys. So at the Western Springs Library on December 3rd, 2019, Matt Zupert and Martin Scott were asked 2 questions by a local resident. 1, are there any applications? And 2, do you have any idea how many towers we will get? The answer was no to both questions. I find that interesting because pursuant to a FOIA request, 9 months prior, on March 13th, 2019, Matt Supert and Martin Scott were both sent an email identifying that Verizon was interested in putting up 30 poles. That's bait stamped to 647 for your reference. 5 months prior, being asked the question of if and how many, in July of 2019, Matt Supert and Martin Scott were notified via email to expect approximately 140 poles. Stakes, whatever semantic word they're using today. On October 17th, 2019, an email was sent with a map identifying the 30 proposed poles that do mysteriously line up with the ones that are in town now. And on November 22nd, Drew Parker from Crown Castle sent an email to Martin Scott and Matthew Supert informing them that he would be submitting an application early next week for the first WTFs, which would be located at 5040 per Elms. Obviously, these emails are in direct conflict with the information Mr. Supert and Mr. Scott provided when addressing the public. President Gallagher, I know you pride yourself on having transparency, as you have all stated today. Does this sound like transparency to you? I'm asking, like everyone else has, hire a lobbyist, not one to monitor, but one to advocate for us. On both federal and state levels, I'm asking that you attend the meeting on Wednesday at the Community House in Hinsdale. We have been notified that Tom Cawley is attending, as is their trustees. Band together, figure this out. This hands tied thing, not buying it. Okay? What else? And 3, fight this in court, just as many other towns have. Hinsdale has been very supportive to their residents. We've been in lots of contact with Hinsdale. They've had a they're advertising the meeting on Wednesday. I hope everyone has heard me say that meeting on Wednesday in Hinsdale at the Community House. There will be a medical doctor speaking about the health effects. The press and politicians have been invited. We need to pack the room more than this. Everyone come. Please come. We need press. We need all kinds of support to get this at a national level. We have to rise up and get everybody on board with this. This is serious stuff. Please come on Wednesday. Thank you.
With regard to the number of polls, we really, at this point, don't even know how many polls they really want, because we have so many telecommunications companies out there. So, no, they probably don't know the exact number of polls out there. We hear different numbers all the time.
So we will
So-
not put out information that is not final. So when people put in an application, then that's final. But if somebody says they're going to submit an application next week, next month, that is conjecture, and it's not our policy to do that. Martin,
Yeah. President Geller, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to address that question about what happened with the library.
Please.
And preface it by saying there's not that many probably in the room that I know, but those that I do talk to on a regular basis will know that whether it's a zoning issue or something else, I am forthright and honest with people because I don't want to waste their time or my time, and I want to serve the village as I have for several years. So at the meeting, unless I'm wrong, there was no direct question about the applications the application had come in. The one that had come in prior to that meeting was so incomplete, even at my early review and when others looked at it, that it wasn't even taken seriously. And the reason it wasn't taken seriously is not from the health aspect at all. I understand your opinions on that. I truly do. I've gotten educated myself on it from people like Pam and the Stop 5 Hinsdale group. But when an application comes in and we can't even find a location of it, that's odd for us, because typically it's one of your homes, on Grove or on Lawn, where there's an address tied to it. It was so poorly done and hastily done. And as Manager Velkme alluded to, these companies have come and gone, and we're not sure really why. The only answer I've ever gotten from AT&T, Crown Castle, who serves as an agent for others, Verizon, I think that's it. I might be missing someone else. But their answer recently, informally, has been they're focused on Chicago. And then they're focused here because there's lots of people who use cell phones and lots of different devices. So that's their answer. But there was no intent no intention, it would be no benefit to me to mislead anyone at that meeting. We came to that meeting, we didn't have to, voluntarily came to it, and learned quite a bit, learned the position of a lot of people, and I would gladly re-review that, listen to the audio of when I spoke at it. Hand to God, there's no intention to mislead anyone. As I've said to several people, Ms. Hanson and Pam Conlon and others, there's a whole lot of other core functions that we work on every day, every week, every year here that we would rather be dealing with than this, just from the aesthetics and the permitting end of it. So you have my full commitment to be transparent with anything that's allowed by law, because that's the law and that's what we have to follow. So.
Thank you, Director Scott. Would anyone else like to address the board this evening? Will you please approach the podium?
I can project.
No, this
No,
is
you
so
have
that the
to.
people at home can, it's only televised in front of the podium.
It's a follow-up question.
And your name, please?
Sheila O'Malley,
Thank you.
5018 Ferrone. As a follow-up question to Mrs. Pabst, who brought up the placement of where the stakes were and what Director Super just said. So is it part of a telecom's application process to put the stakes down and then come to you with their application? So all this stuff is running around. You don't know what's going on, and then they're giving you the application. Is that how you see this rolling out?
No, absolutely not.
So the fact that you guys don't know these little stakes that are going into the ground,
Let
it's
me
just
provide
a
let
fluke?
me provide a little bit of
Super.
comment on the stakes. So I've had a chance I've been contacted probably about 4 or 5 residents over the past week, late last week, early today as well, asking about the stakes. First time I heard about the stakes was probably last Thursday when some people. I've been out. I've taken a look at a number of the stakes within the town. The ones I have seen are probably about 3 feet high, 1 inch in diameter, with a white flag on them, and all the ones I've seen have the word marked Julie on them. So Julie is alluding to a Julie locate. If you're not familiar with what a Julie locate is, that has to occur prior to any sort of construction work or construction drawings that are being designed to locate underground facilities in an area. That could be water, sewer, NICOR, ComEd, it's the whole gamut. The white flag and the white color in general for Julie indicates that that is the area marking where a firm is looking to do work. Prior to that, the firm, and it's common in construction that firms will do Julie locates prior to submitting a permit to the village, because often through our permit process, we require that information. So when a Julie locate actually comes in, and we have not had any Julie locates come in from Verizon or in any of the areas that I have been notified of where there's been stakes. I've looked, we get Julie locates through our system because we locate water and sewer throughout the village. So those stakes have been placed. We don't know who by yet. I don't have to apply for a permit to do those stakes because those stakes are just one method to identify for a Julie locate. You can use white flags, you can use white paint in the parkway or on private if you're doing private work to notify the utility contractors that you're going to be doing work in that area. They will then come out, spray paint if there's underground utilities that may be in conflict, and then typically engineers or surveyors will take that information back to their office and put those on construction plans or design drawings. Usually at that point is when a permit might come into the village, and then we would have information about who's putting the information out there. Now, once a Julie locate actually does get issued into the system, we will get information about who is requesting the Julie locate. Could be Verizon, could be a subcontractor. It'll kind of depend on once we get a notification. But to date, we haven't received any notifications through Julie or any permit applications from Verizon or any other contractors. That's to say, they're not prohibited from putting those markings in the parkway, especially if they're preparing the plan to submit to the village or doing design drawings. Similar to if you were doing your water or service line in your home, your plumber might do a Julie locate prior to submitting a permit to the village to locate where your service line is and where NICOR and other ComEd services might be. It can be up to 30 days. If Julie does not receive a locate within 30 days, they are the locator or the firm placing the stakes or paints or anything like that would be required to restake it and then resubmit a request. It depends on the public utility. Many public utilities have public utility access easements along property lines or rear yard lines, especially if you have, for example, ComEd overhead lines. So they would be able to, within the public utility easements, mark for work that a public utility might be doing.
So, Matt, to reiterate, a company, whether it be public or private, has the authority to go on and do these markings without notifying the village that they're doing that?
Yeah, in the right of way, it's they can mark for the Julie request, and it's a practice that we would request of them to do before they submit for a permit if they did approach us ahead of time. Well, we don't know what we don't know with terms of Verizon and the location. So I don't know what if it is Verizon. I haven't seen the trucks personally. I've not seen photos of any Verizon trucks. I've only seen the stakes. That's good to know, because that's the first. The people I've talked to have not said they've seen Verizon. They've only been asking about the stakes. So this is the first. I have not personally, no.
Good evening.
Hi, this is Slava Marino, Redstone.
Well, Crown Castle is not.
Board meeting, and it's very interesting. First of all, I want to ask, since you have a full House of Concerned Residents, do you take us seriously, and are you on our team? Are you willing to work with us? Because we, told our concerns. Just want to know, are you on our team? And the next thing is, how are we gonna communicate with you if you are on the team? And are we going to do something about it? Do you need time? And once you decide, are you going to email us? Are you going to make decisions with our knowledge? I just want to know how the communication will continue from now on. Thank you.
Thank you. We want to talk about the website.
If you would like to communicate with us, you can always send us an email or even pick up the phone and talk to us and so forth. We have the information on the website. Whatever information we'll get, we'll post. If we get an application, we'll put it up there. We are on your team. It behooves me in a way. I just don't understand. Just so you know, the West Central Municipal Conference that we work with, they do have a federal and they have a Illinois lobbyist that is looking at these. They are monitoring, and that is a decision I can't make. So, but that will be discussed.
We are still working. We are working
Yes.
with our local council of government and also with neighboring communities to try to broaden. I have not received anything from them. Have you?
Not in writing. No.
No.
I'm Pam Conlon, and that is simply not true, because I was at the meeting December 16th when Marla Mangon, an attorney, told you about their lobbyist in Hinsdale's. I'm sure we could read the minutes of the meeting. Chris,
Nibel.
Yes, and we talked all about that. So
Our understanding is Mr. Nybo is also just monitoring for
no,
legislation.
they've hired him.
Mm-hmm. To monitor.
No, he's working on the 294 expansion project and now also on the 5G issue. So that was brought up. And then just to answer your point, I've sent 2 emails to which I've not received a response. And I asked you point blank, are you coming Wednesday? And you didn't respond. So are
I'm sorry,
you?
yes, I will be there, and Director Scott will be there
Okay.
also.
I'll be
Well,
there,
thank
as
you.
will Trustee Rudolph.
Well, I know you're busy, we're all busy, but you don't have a great track record of responding to emails. So,
Ms. Conlon, I was out of town last week. I just got back late last night. Today, I was in meetings most of the day. I did try to get to all the emails that I could, but some were
well,
not
right,
answered.
and you don't have to do all of them, but somebody could have responded. So I just want to say
I just want to
that.
also say that we're all neighbors. We're
Right.
all here. We do not want to see all of these utility poles throughout the neighborhoods. It'll change the character of this
Right.
village,
Oh,
and
no,
I
we
do not
wanna
want
work
to see
together,
that.
but
But we have to work together also, and if we become divisive, if we also start to accuse each other of this or that, that's what they would like to see. They would like to see us do that. We can't. We have to work together.
Well, and you have other things to get to, but let's, strategize and hire that I mean, that was brought up, it's in the minutes, and please respond to emails, and I'm so glad you're coming Wednesday, and, I won't take up any more of your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Connie Spencer. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I mean, it seems like the people who've elected you have repeatedly asked for lobbyists to not just monitor this issue, but to proactively address it, not just sit on the sidelines, but be proactive about it. You can't sit on the sidelines because they'll come in here and it will be too late. So can the board commit today? I mean, it seems like we've been asking and asking and asking and asking, and it's not gotten us anywhere. So can the board commit today to hiring a lobbyist, whether it's the one that Hinsdale is using or whoever, hiring a lobbyist who doesn't just monitor this issue, but proactively advocates on behalf of the residents?
So no, we cannot commit to that today. We have a process here. We have committees that are established to review recommendations for the authorization of spending revenue, taxpayer revenue, and which is what that will fall under. They will review it, they will make a recommendation, and at that time, we will determine whether or not to hire a lobbyist.
So when does that committee meet?
The committee will meet probably in,
This seems urgent, so when does this committee meet?
finance. Or general gov. The process is the committee does not have a date right now, but they will
Can we set a
establish
date for the finance committee? Let's set a date right now for the finance committee to meet so we can approve the money to hire the lobbyist. That's what we're asking for.
Thank you for your comments. We will take them under consideration and we will do
No,
that.
I'm not asking for consideration. I'm asking you to fix a date right now, this evening, for the finance committee to meet so we can all talk to the finance committee and get this approved. I don't want it to be sidelined. I want you to just commit to a date right now.
I assure you it will not be sidelined, but I will not commit to a date right now.
When can you commit to a finance committee date?
We will have a date by our next meeting,
When is your next meeting?
in 2 weeks.
It's gonna be too late.
Too late.
They're putting stakes up in our yards.
I assure you that this will get high priority. I cannot commit to a date right now, but we will do this quickly.
Don't you think it's the right thing to commit to a date, though? It's the right thing to do.
Well, we have to agree on a date. It takes
So
planning.
you have the board right here, so you can all agree on a date. I'm not trying to be mean.
Would we do this with finance or general government?
Either one. We do have trustees that have work obligations, and that's why we have to check with them, so.
But
I
ultimately, the
understand that,
obligation
but
is
if they're
to
out of
health
town,
and
we
safety.
can't,
No, just pick a date.
schedule
Just pick
that,
a date.
so.
You can do it.
Jim, this would probably fall under general government.
Procedurally, I'd like to know, is that possible? I mean, these things have to be put on record. We can't just pick a date because we're all here. It has to be put out there for the entire village to see, not just you people here in the room. I'll be available whenever it can happen, but I want to know what procedures we have to do to get this on.
We just need to do it so that we can publish the meeting 48 hours in advance of the
Needs to
meeting.
be published 48 hours in advance. I think you also have to take a step back and realize if our neighbor has a lobbyist, then maybe we don't need to run out and hire somebody else. It makes sense. Listen, no. Collaboration. You've all asked for us to work with other communities. Running into this knee-jerk reaction, that's not the way to strategize and to
It
move
doesn't feel
forward.
like a knee-jerk reaction. It feels like the people who've elected you and who paid for you would like to hire a lobbyist.
Yes,
Here's-
and that may
here's-
not be the best interest to hire another lobbyist on top of other lobbyists that are working. We belong to a COG, and we have our neighbors that have a lobbyist, and we're working collaboratively with our neighbors. It may make sense to pool our resources and fight this on a united front, which means we may want to get the best lobbyists, which isn't necessarily what Hinsdale or any other community has. So we hear you. The board will evaluate options, like we said early on, but, you know, setting a date, some arbitrary date just to meet isn't a solution to what you're asking for. But that's what you're demanding, to set a date, and I think the board does hear you, and we are aware of this. Well, the mayor did said within 2 weeks, we're gonna have another board meeting, and this will be a recurring, topic. No,
No.
the committee will
committees meet
will
every
meet.
month. We always meet. So if it's general government, me and Jim meet every month. We have had general government committee meetings every month. So it will
Finance
happen.
meets every month. Every
and
committee
finance
meets every
committee
month.
meetings
Every
every
committee.
month. So we will meet. This meeting will happen. I'm just saying. Yeah.
This will be a high priority, I assure you, but hiring, I caution you, hiring a lobbyist is not the be-all and end-all to get things done in Springfield. The most effective way to get things done in Springfield is for the representatives' constituents to write, to call, to visit, to tell them what your concerns are in person.
May I just add to that?
Yes.
I've been involved, as you know, in the Sterigenics case, and I
Yes.
can tell you how much we've been working with our representatives, and that has been incredibly hard. And the reason for it is because the industry has hired multiple lobbyists, not just one. They've got very deep pockets, and they do hire
They
a lot
do.
of people to work in Springfield to write
They
the
do.
laws, which is what we ended up with right now. So the one way to fight, of course, you're totally right. It's not the be-all and end all, but it's not the be-all and end all either for us to speak directly to our representatives, because it doesn't just work that way. We've got to do it in concert. We've got to do it in coordination, and that's what we're asking for. I think that the request for a date is not just like willy-nilly and like, let's just do something in a rush. Of course, you're right. But what we do want is to see action towards, okay, we are going to make the decision to hire one, not to rush into hiring Joe Schmo, but just like, hire someone who's serious, but we have to make the decision today, tomorrow, or in 48 hours that we are going to spend the money that we are willing to put towards this, to hire someone. And then we look for someone who's good and who can help us and who can collaborate with the lobbyists in the neighboring communities. Because it won't be one lobbyist that does this.
I
It
agree.
has to be several.
I agree. It's gotta be a united front. It's gotta be a collective front.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Zellner. Mr. Stanley?
Kind of switching gears a little bit. So it sounds from what we learned about putting the stakes in the ground that the process would suggest applications are imminent, to use a hot term right now. Because I think you said it was about 30 days usually is the turnaround time when you get an application-ish.
3 days, and that's for the Julie locate. I wasn't
But they're not
mentioning,
gonna
I
sit there
wasn't
for
talking
months and
about
months
a
and
permit
months,
application. That's for the Julie locate process.
My question is, at a previous meeting, there was talk about trying to establish some local design governance around how these cell towers will look. Did that go anywhere? Was there any, did we accomplish anything in that regard? Or is it just whatever the,
Are you
companies-
talking about our aesthetic ordinance?
Yes.
Yes, that was adopted.
Okay, it was. I hadn't heard anything on that one. That's good. So
Okay.
we do have some sort of input as far
Design
as.
standards, I believe those are also.
Yes, those
Yes.
are.
Do
those
we
are-
have images available of those? Those been,
There's
Right.
images, there's specific design standards that
They're,
we
they're,
I mean, is
allow
there-
by
they're
is that-
written.
law.
They're written. They're not
written.
pictorial.
Okay,
They're
so
written.
that's accessible on the,
it should be
website.
online
Okay.
in the village code.
thank you.
And if you can't find it there, we will make sure we make them available.
Ms. Perlman? Hi.
I just have two questions. One is, because I was out in the hall, so I missed some of the meeting. Have there been any other new applications filed?
No.
No. Okay. Will you make a commitment to your community that you will use NEPA to say that all the applications are incomplete until an environmental impact statement has been made by Crown Castle or whoever it is that's applying.
That's part
Because
of
you
our,
did that
that's
with
part
the
of our letter. That will continue to be part of the letter, you know, in responding to every application we receive.
Ma'am, I have a question. You mentioned the environmental impact statement. Is it only a statement or a study?
There's an assessment. They have to
So a
prove that
study.
will have no impact. Every single pole, every single stake that is in the ground now where they are anticipating possibly an application, the company, the telecom company, has to say, we've done an environmental assessment that will not harm the environment. It could involve endangered species, all kinds of things.
I just want to make sure that it was something more than just a statement, oh yeah, we
Right.
know about it.
They do an
But it's
assessment.
based on an assessment, a study.
Right.
That statement is based on.
An assessment, but then they have to, provide that information, and you have to look at that information, that it's actually relevant and it makes sense. And
Thank you,
it's
that,
true.
that clarifies my
And
question.
then they put out a statement about it. What I'm saying is, this is federal law, and there was this court case, and I know you're aware of it, and it trumps our state law. It does trump our state law. And we all say, all the communities, that's why I'm coming from Glen Ellen. I have electromagnetic sensitivity. I got really ill. I told the board here at the last meeting. I got incredibly ill a year ago. Very, very ill. Okay? And I'm on my healing journey back. It can happen to everybody in this room from this microwave radiation. That's why I'm here talking to your community. And I'm going to go talk to my community. So,
Ms. Perlman, thank you. It is part of our application review, so thank you very much.
very much.
Mr. Murphy. If you would like to come up, Ms. Zellner, after Mr. Murphy. Mr. Murphy's here now.
Thank you. I'm gonna make this real quick. I just wanna follow up on something that was represented to everybody as we sat here. One of the things that was represented is that this proposed map was never shared with anybody. Okay? There's an email that was turned over. It's bait stamp 435. Where a trustee in October 30th, got an email from Matthew Supert. On Monday night, you asked me if Verizon had provided us any information about a proposed location near Maple and Hampton. At this time, we do not have any information on a location proposed at that intersection. Verizon does have a potential location near Rose and Maple, which you can see on the attached map. Then the response from a trustee on the same day, can I share with the resident, in parentheses, not the map, that at least for now, there is not a pole planned for her lot. Matthew responded the same day, about 6 minutes later, I believe you can verbally let her know yes. So the transparency that we're preaching here clearly is not going on in your village, and this is what you keep promising us.
These are
you
potential. These are not established. Then we're chasing everything to the ground. As it is, our staff is stressed.
I was told that nobody sitting up here got that map. I was told that. Everybody in here heard it. I don't think my question was unclear, and I don't think the statement was unclear.
Ms. Zellner.
Yes. I have a question. Suppose that there's a new application and it comes with a NEPA study. Does the village have capacity to evaluate that study and say whether it's a well-conducted study or not?
Do we have? Can you answer that?
We will evaluate that. We will be evaluating all applications and all submittals.
No, that's not my
Yeah.
question though. My question is, does the village have the scientific capacity to evaluate a NEPA study to determine whether that NEPA study is valid or not? Because it can just become, as you were saying, just a statement, oh, everything's
Correct.
fine. I've seen many of those.
At this time, I do not believe we do.
So how are we going to address that? Is there a plan to be able to address that when,
Again,
if?
there's an opportunity that we are trying to work with other communities to, again, work collaboratively, pool resources, and develop a team to deal with this. The legislation's been around for a year and a half, and now it's coming to a crisis point because the cell agencies are now getting to a point where they're filing applications or moving to file applications, and now it's incumbent upon the municipalities to, either go it alone or band together and try to be ready to, deal with this issue. We're working collaboratively with a handful of West Central municipalities to sort of pool our resources and band together. We were the first community, I believe, at least in the local area, to get an application. We were the first one to, push back on one, but there's still more work to do on our end, for
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
What I would advise, and maybe something for consideration for the community, is that in addition to pooling resources for lobbying, that we should also be pooling resources for evaluation of some of these applications if we
Correct.
don't have the technical capacity to evaluate them.
Thank you.
Correct.
Good point. Mr. Holderman.
Yes, to follow up on that, I would recommend that the village form a committee on 5G that has trustees, 1 or 2 trustees on it, village residents who have expertise and concern, and then can advise the board and keep the board and the residents abreast of this information. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening. We've been going at it now for over an hour and 15 minutes. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? But we do have a very full agenda to get to tonight. All right, thank you for your attendance. Your comments have been heard. We will discuss and we will get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move on to the consideration of our agenda items during the workshop portion of our meeting. You're welcome to stay if you would like, but if not, please quickly vacate.
Oh, we're not done, Dad.
How do I say that nicely?
Oh, you can't come up. Are you staying?
Okay, thank you, everyone. First up on our agenda, agenda item number 1, Planning and Zoning, Trustee Jen.
Me?
Yes. Thank you.
I think everything's been covered
Yes.
with regard to planning and zoning and 5G, so I defer back to you.
Thank you, that's it. Thank you very much. Moving on then to Properties and Recreation Committee, Trustee Chen.
Thank you. We actually covered several items in our last committee meeting last Thursday night. Most of them are just updates, but there's one item that we will be needing to take action on in our next meeting in January. So I think I will start with the action item, and that is in regard to authorizing and approving a lease agreement for use of a portion of the Grand Avenue basement for the C-SPAR sensory room. I know that has been discussed before I joined the board. So in the committee meeting, we did get a copy of the lease agreement, and it's been passed, I think, between C-SPAR and Attorney Jarusek, and I'm not sure if we have the latest copy of it, but the lease agreement is between the Village of Western Springs as the lessor and the Southeast Association for Special Parks and Recreation, or C-SPAR, as lessee. So I think that this has been talked about a lot, but it looks like it's actually coming to fruition, and this is imminent, the construction and the agreement that we will need to sign with C-SPAR. We discussed the draft agreement with Director Bradis and with Village Attorney Mike Jarusik during our committee meeting. So as you know, the room is to be constructed at a shared expense of the village and C-SPAR. C-SPAR will contribute $50,000 to the construction costs, And we'll go over this in the second item because we did get a bid for the construction of the room, which is going to be about 122,000 with a couple items that aren't related. So C-SPAR is contributing 50,000 to the construction. But C-SPAR will be furnishing all of the specialty equipment and furniture and everything that's actually in the sensory room. The term of the lease agreement is 20 years with C-SPAR. We talked about the terms of the lease agreement in committee, and we note that the lease agreement with Lyle for their sensory room was used as a template for our document. Attorney Jerusik noted that he adjusted the terms for termination of the lease agreement to be slightly more favorable to the village. So one thing I will say is that although it's not necessary, the Rec Commission, which serves in an advisory capacity, was never able to get a quorum and never met and reviewed this lease agreement or the construction bid. So it just came directly to the committee without going through the Rec Commission review process. I just wanted to note that. Staff recommends approval of authorizing and signing the lease agreement for the with C-SPAR for the installation and operation of the sensory room, and I believe that the Property and Rec Committee, we concur with that. Yes. So.
If I can add,
Yes.
Trustee Chen,
Yes.
I know that that the commission did not get a chance to meet with regard to the actual documents, but I know that they have met in the past. I
Yes.
attended one meeting when
Yes.
the C-SPAR rep was there
Right, sure.
talking about
Yes.
not only how the room would look and the shape of the instruments and everything else and the furniture that
Sure.
would go in, but also
Yeah.
about the costs and the
Yes.
and the division.
Okay.
So I think
they're
we can
well
be
aware of
confident
the
that
main terms of the lease agreement.
I believe so.
Madam President and
Yes.
Trustee Chen, having served on that committee in the past,
Yes.
that discussion came up, and they were very supportive, in my
Yes.
recollection, of this process and project. And so, I believe there's merit in moving forward with
Yes.
this.
I agree. I just want to say they did not specifically review the actual lease agreement and the
Thank you.
construction bid.
Can I
I appreciate you noting that.
Yes.
Just a quick question. So with regard to the space, and it doesn't look like much space. It's probably 500 square feet, I think, in total. But is that have we taken into account any long-term? 20 years is a long time. Taking into account that space for long-term use of that building.
So that's interesting. I raised that exact point. Like, what happens to the room? What?
I say great minds.
Okay. So, I mean, at this point, we're anticipating that it could go beyond 20 years. I mean, it's an important asset to the C-SPAR community and to the western suburbs. So, but that was a question. But the answer was also, and we can direct this back there, but that we are upgrading the space so that it could be used for something else. Even if the sensory room goes away and they take away all the special furnishings and equipment, that it will be a nice space and we might be able to reuse it for another purpose, just upgrading the basement of Grand Avenue.
When I
That
was
is
on the
a-
rec commission,
yeah.
The spot they're talking about is in a dingy part of the basement that is
Yeah.
good because it's very soundproof, but not really desirable for any other activities. And that's, I think, a big chunk of that money is they're gonna have to really pretty that space up again. They have to drywall it off, and so I don't think they're not using the space right now.
Part of it is it. I don't know if you want to speak to that, if you want to add anything. Okay.
It's the space, once again, is not being used for anything right now. The viewing area, the office portion of it is
Yeah.
actually was being used as storage.
Yeah.
And it was a mechanical room.
Okay.
So, we're making a mechanical room into a usable room, and then the other corner, like I said, just
Yeah.
dingy and needed to be upgraded.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that is that.
Thank you.
Okay, so the lease agreement and authorizing will be coming on to
You had a comment on it?
yeah.
Trustee Chen had mentioned, whether the final version of the
Oh, yeah.
lease is in the packet. It is. I worked with Alex.
Okay.
We got comments back from legal counsel and C-SPAR. Those were incorporated in the document. Nothing to, be concerned about. Very reasonable, requests, minor modifications. So you have the final version for approval in your
Okay.
packet tonight
Thank
that you
you.
can move forward on.
Okay.
But nothing of substance
No.
was changed. Okay.
No.
Yeah. Okay, great. So relatedly, I'm going to stick to the C-SPAR item. The bid documents for the sensory room construction were posted on November 14th, and 2 bids were received. Staff is recommending the lower bid of $122,723 from a firm called Construction Solutions. This number also includes installing a bench in the Grand Avenue basement, which I suppose goes along with preparing that area to be better used in Grand Avenue, and upgrading all of the lighting to LED lighting at Grand Avenue for a cost of $8,000. Again, C-SPAR is contributing $50,000 for construction costs, and the approved 2020 budget included a special recreation levy of $50,000 to pay only for C-SPAR related expenses. So that is how we are addressing that.
Was it 122 or was it 114,000?
The 108?
Okay.
Okay.
So it is 108 for simply for the C-SPAR room, but then we also, as part of that bid, got pricing for adding a bench in the common area of Grand Avenue, which will perhaps also be used by people that are using the C-SPAR room. And then that same construction firm will be aiding with the upgrade of the LED lighting in Grand Avenue.
Okay.
So that bid included $8,000. So yes, the construction costs for that sensory room are one of those numbers, 114 or 108.
The 108, but then the cubby bench was, I think,
Yeah.
6,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So great. The next thing I have to ask is, are there any questions regarding the lease or the construction bid? But you guys have covered that. Okay, so those are the action items that we will have at our next meeting. But here are some other updates on some other projects we discussed. Related to the I-294 expansion and village improvements that are going along with that process, we did receive a pipeline license agreement from BNSF. The pipeline agreement is being reviewed by Attorney Jerusek currently. We discussed that this is a positive event because BNSF is it takes a long time to get things out of them, and plus we are asking to put a pipe underneath their right-of-way. So we were very happy to receive this draft license agreement from BNSF for constructing that pipeline underneath the tracks in their right-of-way. So, and there was also a permit submitted to the village for a stormwater diversion chamber at the Public Works facility, which is related. And that is being reviewed by the village engineer. And I can talk a little bit more about what that is for, but it's going to be related, hopefully, to upgrading the separation of storm and sewer in Old Town North. A very minor item, we also discussed a letter of understanding with the tollway to allow the location of a temporary ITS pole on village property that's falling out of the construction easement. But we don't think there's anything terribly troubling about that. And lastly, a quick update regarding the West Pedestrian Underpass, which is the underpass underneath the tracks. We are awaiting Phase 3 engineering proposals, which is the last piece, is actually the construction piece. And I take it they were supposed to be received today to keep in the timeline
Yeah,
that
we
we
did.
need.
We didn't send the draft the documents off today. Quite a bit of conversation with IDOT today
Yeah.
about that. So the draft documents are out to them, and we will have formal recommendations for the board's approval in the February board cycle. We'll present it at the next committee meeting.
Yes. So, and that was necessary to keep with the timeline for the, is it the IDOT required timeline, or?
Yeah, the project will be let, which means go out to bid
Yes.
through IDOT's process. So
Yes.
we're targeting for an April letting.
Okay. Okay, so that is that. Now, great news on a very separate topic, and hats off to the Public Works staff for this. The Public Works staff applied for and was awarded a grant from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources and the U.S. Forest Service for a village-wide tree survey, and I think this is very exciting. The grant is a matching grant, so every dollar we spend will be matched. So current estimates for the inventory of trees in village property and on parkways is 7,000 trees. Thought that was very interesting. The grant will not only allow us to inventory the trees by species, but it will assess the health and risk of the trees for future planning and liability purposes. And I know that many residents have talked to me about concerns with trees that are in the parkway with limbs and such. So this will be a great inventory for us to take. And staff is finalizing the bid documents and hoping to award a contract by mid-February with a completion deadline of July 2020. And they're trying to move quickly because it's best to analyze the trees when they're bare and dormant. So really hats off. We were told that Public Works staff really researched this, they found this grant, and they applied for it, and they got it, and that was really wonderful.
I think
They
it's great.
took
As a
that.
Tree City USA,
Yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
important.
Wow.
Is this just right-of-way trees, or is it all trees?
Well, it's, yeah.
Right.
Okay. And then, do we have a projection? Because I think the match is up to 15,000, so do we have a projection?
Correct. So we are preparing bid documents right now, and we'll be going out to bid here in the next couple of weeks. We're looking to match that, if we can, up to that. We don't necessarily think we'll have to spend all of that based on the trees.
Mhm.
We're thinking the total project cost will probably be between $10,000 and $15,000.
Oh, okay.
But we'll find out more information in the coming weeks once we do go out to bid.
I think it's great that we're doing this, and
Yeah.
hats off to Mr. Brakey and the entire Public Works
Yes,
Department. Yeah.
really great. I mean, trees are such an asset to the community.
Yes.
They're so important for the aesthetics and the enjoyment. So, great news on that and great work. We discussed declaring surplus the Polaris Ranger vehicle, which I guess is not really working anymore. So we're going to declare that surplus. And lastly, a few updates on CapEx projects. If you have a chance, go check out the new front door and entry glass windows at the historic water tower.
I did not know
They
were
were
in.
installed on December 23rd, 2019 at no small cost.
Yes.
So you should definitely take a look at them. They're very nice. We are awaiting final invoicing on that. Good news on the East Train platform. The final punch list is complete with the exception of some plant replacements on the East Train platform. And I think those plant replacements are scheduled to occur in the spring. And so we're awaiting the final invoicing coordinated through IDOT. And then lastly, just a little update on the Wolf Road bike path near Ogden. It appears that there is still progress being made. IDOT did supply some sort of sign-off and has asked for maybe something else. But staff is cautiously hopeful that construction might begin before the end of 2020, but still wading through the process of approvals with all the entities involved. So,
Can I ask just a quick question about that?
yeah.
So for phase one, are we over budget based upon the document, 70,000 versus 29?
Yes, we are, because of all the problems that we've had with the forest preserves.
Okay.
Yes, good point.
We had to relocate we relocated the path.
Yeah, we've had
2 or
to,
3
as part of the
times.
coordination, then we've looked at multiple different locations for the path opposed from our initial proposal through them. If you recall, a little over a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago now, the Forest Preserve actually requested us to extend the project area to the north by about 400 feet. We had to go through an entire submittal process back through IDOT and the Federal Highway Administration through that, only for them to come back about 6 to 8 months later and rescind that request. So there's been a lot of complications and issues coordinating with the Forest Preserve, as well as 2 other agencies that are also adjacent to it, the Cook County Highway Department, as well as IDOT themselves.
Thank you.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Chen. A lot to digest.
Yes.
Public Works and Water Committee, Trustee King.
My first 2 items are because the October flooding of last year. So the first one, we'd like to approve not to exceed $49,712, the Springdale to Christopher Burke engineering proposal. So that is the study on Franklin Avenue and how the water flows into Franklin. So it's just going to look at why are they getting so much water in all the area around it. That money has not been budgeted last year, so if it is approved, we'll have to do another amendment or amend the budget or amend.
Yes, we'll have to, put in an amendment to the budget.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. And the other one, same thing, because of all the flooding, and this one is more about Ridgewood. We'd like to approve not to exceed $80,352 to the Phase 2 engineering for HR Green. So what they are looking at is, so Ridgewood, all this water kind of rushes down 55th Street and down into Ridgewood. the idea is not to have like a reservoir or a basin to collect all the water, but just to slow it down as it's going there. So it's using kind of a green infrastructure of like bigger culverts, stones, and water-loving plants that are going to absorb all this water. And it's not even just to kind of slow it down so the system can handle it. The same thing is done in Hinsdale, east of County Line Road, north of 55th Street. I just know it when I'm just cycling past it, and I didn't even know what it was for. I just thought it looked really attractive. So it's an attractive way and a kind of a green way that we can kind of do something about this water.
Trustee
with Ms.
King, can I ask?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but do we have data back from Hinsdale on how effective that is at all, or is it too new?
I don't have any mathematical data on what it is. I know HR Green, as part of they won an award through the American Public Works Association for this project. There might be some info there. We've had a number of meetings with Hinsdale Public Works counterparts, as well as some of their engineers who also worked on this. And it's been very successful in help alleviating some of the water in that subdivision over there.
Okay.
That specific subdivision actually had no storm sewers at all.
Oh.
So they were trying to build something that would help capture and release the water, as Trustee Fink mentioned, in a controlled fashion. They didn't have the resources to put complete storm sewers in. We're in a similar but slightly different situation of we do have storm sewers in there, but the capacity is the big issue, and we know that from the infrastructure study we did back in 2016. And we also don't have the funds to do a comprehensive overhaul of that stormwater infrastructure. So we're looking at this as an opportunity to kind of help with some of those localized flooding issues in that area without having to completely replace all of the storm sewers.
Thank you. Thank you. Seth.
Right. Item number 3 is we're looking for a municipal code change of when you have to get your cars off the streets when it snows. We'd like to change it from it's currently 4 inches to 2 inches. So most of the nearby communities all are 2 inches, and they're having problems getting snow plows down streets when there's cars on either side. So we're looking to change that. As far as the capital summary reports, this is my nice list because most of the things we can check off our list. So with the new well, the main well has essentially finished. The drilling's finished. The boring that connects to the osmosis plant is finished, and the electrical building and the pump equipment that has been sent out to bid. So all that is done for now. Standpipe, that is completed. All they're working on are putting back the cell towers back on top of it. The Ridgewood Oaks detention basin, so this has been a long process. So there is a SSA agreement with the people of that condo association, and it's the last minute. There's a couple residents who have not acknowledged their letters. Is that correct, Matt? So it's more like trying to track down these last 2 or 3 people.
Yeah, so I had a conversation with Attorney Drusik, and I believe he'll have an update under his report tonight to kind of expand upon it. But there's basically 3 out of the approximately 68 residents over there who we just can't get a hold of with these waivers. We are looking to proceed forward with this project, going out to bid within the next month or so. I just had a conversation with the village engineer about bid dates. We are working through the draft SSA ordinance and kind of getting that all in a row to finally kind of move forward on this project.
As Nicole has talked about, the problems working with the railroad, we finally got our approval for the electrical charging station and the roof over the bikes. So it's a long time just to get that approval, and so it sounds like once it's done, work can be completed in a month. So
Correct.
like
Yeah, we got the
by-
verbal.
by March.
It kind of depends on when they start. So it is still weather dependent. But once we receive the actual permit in the mail, we receive the verbal confirmation. They could begin work within the next couple weeks, as soon as weather allows them to do that work.
And in December, there were we spoke about the Central Avenue reconstruction. That's going to happen in 2022. Is that right?
2021 is the target.
2021. But the big problem with that, it's not a problem. It's fantastic. It's being federally funded, and there were recommendations that we had to increase the road by 8 feet. So there was met with the community, and the kind of a consensus of do we really need it this wide? So now it's changed. It's only going to be increased by 6 inches, but with the caveat of people only be parked on one side of the road. So no, I thought that was a great meeting of the minds of the community kind of came in and kind of gave their point of view. So that is what's happening with Central Ave.
The side by the park?
Yes.
The west side.
Yes.
And we're actually hoping to kind of wrap this all up, to solidify the comments from the public meeting. We're hoping to do a brief presentation to the village board, probably about 10 minutes at the next meeting, to kind of summarize what the comments were and what the village is kind of moving forward with the response to those comments. We're going to be putting a project page up on the village website probably by the end of this week to follow up on that project as we kind of continue with it.
Are we
Do
gonna
we-
have another meeting, I'm sorry, are we gonna have another, meeting with the residents?
So we're hoping that this brief presentation on the 27th, the vast majority of the conversations I've had and all the comments, I would say more than 90%, we're all concerned with the widening.
Correct.
We are proceeding forward to not widen the street,
Right.
as Trustee Fink reported. So once we have that information on the village website, as we report to you, we'll follow back up with the residents. If they feel there's still a need to have a conversation about those specific topics or something we didn't answer, we'll follow up with an additional meeting probably in February. But we're hoping to kind of close out this last comment period with the presentation at the end of this month.
Okay, I just think it's important that we
Yeah.
do
Come full
follow the
circle
steps
on it.
that you just said, and I know they were expecting another meeting, so if instead what we're gonna present here on the 27th meets, their concerns, and I agree, the widening was the primary issue, that sounds good, but I just wanna make sure that they are satisfied with the communication and the input that they provided.
Correct.
Yep, thank you, sorry.
No, yeah, just to follow up on that, so will we proactively be reaching out to those residents that were at the meeting to tell them that we're doing this at our next meeting?
Yes, correct. So I'm hoping once we get the project page up on the village website, we will be sending a letter out to those residents that will summarize basically the comments and what we're doing moving forward.
Okay.
Reference them to that project page. Again, my contact information, Assistant Director Bernacki, as well as the village engineer on that project, and then that we will have this kind of brief summary, and then we'll work with the individual residents as needed basis if there's a broader issue we need to deal with, or if there's specific localized individual resident issues, we can follow those up on a more individual basis.
Perfect, thank you.
The same residents who got the letters, in the first place, right?
Correct.
Won't be the ones who got it, okay,
Mhm.
okay, great, thank you.
And the last thing is maintenance on, water used to be the hot button topic in Western Springs, now it's 5G. But the scheduled maintenance for well number 4 is going to take place. Did it start this week?
They are out there.
Started
They've
today?
mobilized today. The well is currently offline. They're starting to do the work. So we're looking at approximately 4 weeks worth of work. Again, it is weather dependent, but we've met with the contractor on multiple occasions, and the project scope seems to be like it's moving forward very smoothly.
Again, the biggest thing to stress here is kind of scheduled maintenance. This time period was picked in January just because we used the least amount of water. So we're not going to have to access the shallow well, and hopefully there are no water problems with this.
We will be posting updates to that project, milestone updates, under the Municipal Services news flash on the village website, and then there will also be a project page which we'll have online probably by the end of the day tomorrow. For that matter.
Great.
Just
Thank you.
a quick question about that. So from a water usage perspective, does everything look in line to what we expected it to be this time of year?
Yes, yeah, so we're right on target of what we expect. We are trending slightly high because of how warm it's been, but nothing that exceeds the capacity of what the plant can meet with the current one well. So we have no foreseeable need to bring well number 1 online at this point. I know there was a structure fire that occurred over the weekend. So just to reiterate, if we do have major water main breaks or structure fires, we do need to adjust our demand usage and we work pretty much on the fly with that and fluidly. But at this point, we don't anticipate any major issues with that.
Good question, thank you. And thank you, Trustee Fink. Moving on to Finance Committee, Trustee Rudolph.
Thank you, President Gallagher. The Timber Trails update that you see on your agenda, we are gonna actually defer that to our meeting next month, next February, the workshop. And with that, I have no further update.
Thank you. Moving on now to Public Health and Safety Committee, Trustee Sifferman.
Madam President, there are several items that come to this body out of our January 9th Public Health and Safety Committee meeting. Backup materials for these discussion items are contained in your packets. Item A and B, Timber Trails traffic and on-street parking enforcement and snow removal agreement and code amendment ordinance. The Timber Trails Development Company has requested that the village and police department enforce certain regulations regarding motor vehicle traffic and on-street motor vehicle parking on streets and roadways owned by the developer of Timber Trails subdivision, and establish an arrangement for the village to snowplow and salt subdivision streets owned by the development company according to a specified reimbursement rate that was calculated by the village and is included in an agreement draft. State laws require the village to enter into a formal agreement with Timber Trails Development in this circumstance and execute a necessary code amendment ordinance. Village Attorney Jerusik has prepared drafts of the agreement and code amendment ordinance that can be found in your packets. The committee supports these measures and recommends advancement for full board adoption. Absent any questions, I'm requesting both matters be placed on the next omnibus bill.
We will do that, thank you.
Item C, self-contained breathing apparatus replacement purchase request. You may recall that this is the second half of a necessary purchase request advanced by the fire department at our November meeting. The committee recommends approval of the $67,938 expenditure to Air One Equipment Incorporated, an amount contained in our approved 2020 capital budget, and wishes that this matter be placed on to the next omnibus bill for board approval.
We will place it on the omnibus.
And number D, other, letter D. Chief Buds announced the reincarnation of the Western Springs Peer Jury Program, enabled by changes made in state law that cured the confidentiality issues raised by other municipalities. 3 new program coordinators possessing backgrounds in law, education, and social work have been selected to work with Sergeant Terry Madler in developing a revised peer-to-peer program that will hold youth accountable for their aberrant behavior within a compassionate framework of civic redemption. Their efforts to recruit prospective jurors from local high schools has already begun. This is a great program that has the Public Health and Safety Committee heartily supports. It's submitted for information. Any other questions? Be happy to answer, or Chief Buds is very excited about this program from conversations that we've had from the very beginning of my involvement in this village board. That completes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Sifferman. General Government Committee, Trustee Terrell.
Thank you, Madam President. Going to letter number A, which is the Metropolitan Alliance of Police Chapter 360 Extension Agreement. What that is we have in place a contract with a 3-year term with the police union, which is the Metropolitan Alliance of Police Chapter 360. It runs from April of 2017 until March of this year. We are considering extending that contract with the police union. These are the patrolmen, another year, so it runs concurrent with the sergeant's contract until the end of March of 2021. Again, to have it run concurrent with the sergeant's contract. The extension includes 3 terms of note. The first is that it has an alternative impasse resolution agreement whereby the parties to the agreement may submit disputes concerning wages, hours, terms, and conditions of employment to arbitration. It's pretty lengthy as to what type of arbitration, but suffice it to say that's one of the terms in the extension for the next year. There is also a 2.5% salary increase effective April 1st of 2020, with the wages paid in the step levels of the patrol officers. I think there's 6 or 7 levels depending on their service. That's all spelled out in the agreement. And finally, there's the deletion of the fair share language from the contract extension. What the fair share language was, in earlier contracts, it provided that employees must pay a fee known as a fair share fee to the union to cover the cost of collective bargaining. This language was struck down by the Supreme Court's Janus decision for public sector employees, so we are removing that for the 1-year extension. Moving on to item B, which is the report of the liquor license requests. We first have a request by the Theater of Western Springs. They are asking for the Class M liquor license to be amended. And the Class M liquor license was created much earlier. It allows the theater to sell beer and wine during their events. The theater has asked us that the Class M beer and wine license be expanded to include liquor in the form of theme-based drinks based on the performances. So what they would do is if they had a particular play, they would come up with one drink and one drink only that would be sold at the events. We didn't have a problem with that. They do need a code amendment, which for the single specialty drink, it'd be served by a professional bar service. It's not going to have sit-down bars at the theater. It'd be adult events only, and it would be enjoyed during the performance, which we didn't have a problem with that. That request will be considered by the Liquor Commission, which I think is it later this week?
January 20th? Oh, Marty left.
Okay.
End of the
All right.
month.
Okay. The second liquor code amendment is requested by a local resident seeking to open an establishment called the Opry at 4354 Johnson. The code amendment sought would be for the Opry to serve on-site consumption of alcohol, primarily craft beer, specialty beer, not Bud, not Miller Lite, not Heineken, things of that nature, but craft beer without food being provided. The Opry would be open early in the day, and a good portion of its business would be devoted to coffee sales, and then they would sell the craft beer later on in the evening. The alcohol is related to the microbeer trend in the area in other communities. They have a list on the materials of other communities, Downers Grove, Romeoville, I think Mokina, which have similar of these establishments. This would require creation here of a new liquor classification and a new liquor license. This will also be considered by the Liquor Commission. From my perspective, however, and I'm just one perspective, there's 7 of us here, I find the proposed ordinance allowing alcohol sales, even craft specialty bills, and consumption without food service to be somewhat contrary to the character of the village. I applaud and I encourage the prospective owner to come in and develop this property, what appears to be a vibrant, well-organized, and exciting new venue for our town. But what I take issue with, and again, I'm just one person, with having a liquor code amendment necessary to put that business in place. I think there's a compelling reason for our current ordinances to have a food service requirement, and I did not find it to be in the best interest of the village to depart from our liquor code. I feel it could be a slippery slope with any deviation from what has been the last 10, 15 years a very well-fashioned code. We're a relatively small village without an industrial section, for example, an area which would be a better fit for this type of a business without food. We also are, even given the high-end class nature of the Opry with premium beer and whiskey, we are principally homes with a very few businesses better suited, in my opinion, limited to restaurants serving alcohol than alcohol business not required to serve food. Being that as it may, the Liquor Commission will be discussing this more thoroughly. The final
Excuse me, Trustee Chair, was that a consensus of the committee, or is that just?
That's just my opinion.
Okay.
I don't know, Nicole, if you felt the same way or
We
not.
did
We thought it
not.
should go to the Liquor Commission for a more broad, I'm just one person, a more
Right.
expansive look into it because of the benefits that this would provide for the town. I don't know if you had an opinion.
We did
or-
not offer a consensus recommendation. I recommended that it continue on to the Liquor Commission to get their more review and
Sure.
feedback. So that does not represent my views totally.
That's
Thank
just
you.
me. As I did want the Liquor Commission to expand, I just wanted to put my 2 cents into it to know where I stood.
Thank you, I just wanted to know
Okay.
whether it's a committee recommendation.
The location?
It's 4354 Johnson. I
the
think
old
it's the old
pet
pet
store.
store. It was a
Yeah.
pet
That's
store.
That's what I was gonna say, it's the pet store.
Very small.
Very small.
Okay, I mean, I read the documents, so how would they have live music?
Yeah,
I didn't have a problem with live music.
No, I'm just trying to imagine the space.
well, there's an outdoor area behind apparently that he hopes to use in warm weather, and good weather.
Okay.
Um,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
I do have an other, not as interesting as the other
Yeah.
things we've heard tonight, but.
Oh, excuse me, trustee
sorry.
Terrell, before we move
Yes.
on, I just wanted to correct myself. I said January 20th, but Attorney Jerusik advises me the Liquor Commission meeting is January 22nd.
The other category, we have a request from Director Schramm, who has patiently waited throughout this entire night. I think I can cover this. We need a new storage area network appliance to house all of our data. Our current SAN, as it's called, is 8 years old and would require about $18,500 next year alone for maintenance. Pat can get us a brand-new one with a 5-year warranty for $34,420. This has already been budgeted in the 2020 Capital Improvement Fund, and LTAC will be contributing 1/3 of the cost of this. They'll be ponying up $11,473. Now, Pat would like to replace the SAN within the next month, so we need this on the omnibus in 2 weeks, which is why I'm mentioning this now. If there's no other questions, I'd like to put that on omnibus for January 27th.
We will put that on for the 27th. Thank you.
That's all I'd have.
Thank you very much, trustee Terrell. Moving on to my report, I just have a couple of items. The March board meeting schedule has changed due to spring travel. We found we did not have a quorum for the second meeting. If we held only the first meeting, there would not be ample time for committees to meet prior to that meeting. So we have combined the meetings into one meeting in March, and that will be on March 16th. I apologize to trustee Sifferman, who cannot make it at that time, but this will allow us to have a quorum and move forward. So please mark your calendars for that. And also, I'd like to remind you that the annual WCMC Legislative Breakfast is Saturday, February 8th at the Elmcrest Banquets in Elmwood Park. If you would like to attend, if you remember, this is where state and federal legislators, some of them, attend. And if you would like to attend to meet them, as well as your counterparts from other communities within our Council of Government, please let Elaine know by the end of this month. And that's it for me. Moving on to Manager Velkney.
Thank you, President Gallagher. I just wanted to notify you that on Wednesday, we believe that the tollway will be starting some tests of the pile drives, and this would begin in the morning. Intermittently, they would do it. They're just testing the area for the shoe fly. So that is all the information that I have on that. And also with regard to the garbage, I'd like to thank everyone for their patience. We have 4,500 households that we changed their garbage habits, and that is a monumental effort. And so there are some places that we may have missed. There might be some trees out or so. We are working on that. They may have missed backdoor garbage or so. But if you call the office, then our staff will take care of that and make sure that Lakeshore gets the message to make the pickup. And I'd really like to thank all of our staff, especially Elaine Haskey and Ellen Bear, for all of the work that they've done on this, because this is one of the major issues in municipal government, is making sure that we have garbage.
Yeah, quick question on that, and I thank you very much, and thanks to everybody, all the work, 'cause personally I've found it to be really convenient, and I really like it. But just even looking around town in terms of the carts that are placed incorrectly and things like that, and the use of blue bags, does Lakeshore themselves, do they take that on in terms of, do they do any kind of like stickering or anything to let the residents know? I mean, I know we've done a lot in terms of communicating, but probably in my anecdotal survey of my neighborhood, probably a quarter of them are turned the wrong way.
Yeah, we also noticed that. We put out some information on our social media, Facebook in particular, with a photo of proper placement
That was
of
very
the
helpful, by the
carts.
way.
I think that is getting a little traction. We're also hoping that when people start to see the trucks come around and they see that the metal bar is actually what the truck is using to hoist it, they'll start to think about keeping the metal bar to the street. I know some of our seniors have commented on that they thought the handle would be picked up, and then they realized that. So we're only in that second week of people actually seeing it happen. So we're hoping over the next month we'll start to see a shift. If we don't, we'll continue to put things out. LRS is letting people know, but I don't believe they have a sticker or anything to kind of do that. They do have a sorry note. If something was uncollectible, they'll put a sorry note, but I doubt they're using that at this point to indicate proper placement.
Right.
We'll keep an eye on that, and maybe we can work with Lake Shore to do some stickering, even if they have to produce a sticker with a photo of the proper
Yeah.
placement.
Yeah.
And they've been very willing to take our suggestions. Elena's spent a lot of time on the phone with them this week, just to, today and then last week as well, to, find the things that they really need to work on or touch quickly, and work on any issues that have come forward from the residents. So we're hoping that we're gonna get the kinks out in January and then kind of roll forward from there.
I'm sure they have with any new village. I'm sure they have transition issues and just everybody learning, and you see your neighbors. And I know when they go down the street, the first pass for the, I think they do the garbage first, they turn around all the ones that are wrong. So then when they make their second pass, they're all right. So, I mean, they have their own way that they're dealing with
I
it.
think people are starting to see the trucks and how the automation works.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll solve some of that.
Yeah, I think there's also some concerns with some of the confusion with the people whose homes have a bit of slope there by their driveways, that they kind of don't know exactly where to put their carts. So that was the other.
In some cases, we did find that the sloping driveways, people weren't able to put them all the way to the street. I think Lake Shore's working resident by resident, case by case on those.
Right, again, thanks to everybody. And the communication, I think, and the posting on social media, I think, has been very thorough. So thank you.
Selman's been really keeping up on that and trying to answer as many of the questions that she can that have specific questions, or pointing them to the website.
Yeah, that's good, thanks.
And I will just say on, I think it was just December 30th or 31st, whatever the last day of the blue bags, when I saw 5 of them rolling down the
Yeah.
street, I'm like, I would be very glad not to see that again, so.
Yes. And
If
I
might
wanted
add
to,
one
go ahead,
comment,
Jim.
With regard to, they must have 2 different trucks then, because I noticed when they were picking up trash in Ridgewood, it's a truck that it's a clamp, so it doesn't make any difference which way the cart's positioned. As long as it's close to the curb, it just grabs it, turns it upside down, and empties it. So,
Yeah.
Can I also just mention
Yes.
the blue bags? We did find out that Field Park School is accepting those. They are still using them. They have a contract with Republic for the commercial pickup at the school. So if any residents do still have their rolls of bags and they'd like to donate them, the school is accepting those.
Thank you. And I did get a question from a resident. He thought that the backdoor service was no longer available, so I told him it is available for an extra fee, but I just wanted to mention that here in case there are other residents under that assumption.
That is for refuse collection only, right, for the backdoor service. That
For
is
the
still
garbage, the
available.
recycling still has to go out to the curb.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. And then I wanted to let you know that I got a very complimentary message from someone saying how much she loved the new system. So I doubt you hear that too often, so I wanted to relay that to you. And thank you both for your work. Daisy too, I know, worked hard on this. I think the rollout started in August, and I know that your meticulous application of the rollout throughout all the months is what it has contributed to this smooth transition, so thank you very much.
And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Valkmy. Attorney Drusik?
To close out a long night, I did get you all, hopefully a very concise memo that explains the creation of Special Service Area Number 8, which is going to benefit Ridgewood Oaks subdivision by helping them improve a drainage basin that is in need of reconstruction. It also is going to provide some enhancement of drainage relief to the Ridgewood subdivision, by its increased capacity. Like the TIF that we did earlier this year, Special Service Area is a very kind of dense kind of process, very procedural. I put into the memo kind of a formation, a summary process. We're going to work through that process over the next few months to implement this if there's support on the board. The engineer did provide the construction plan. I provided that to you. There are some minor financial updates that I'm working with the engineer and Director Turion that will be brought back to you for, in this ordinance, this updated ordinance for action at the next meeting. If there's support tonight, the goal would be to have the board adopt the ordinance in the packet that sets a public hearing 60 days out from the next meeting. We have to wait that a period of time because of state law. We have to publish a notice. We have to send some mailings. There are 60 townhomes in the subdivision that need notice. As Director Supert said, or Trustee Fink, we have gotten waivers from 98% of the owners there. So the reality is there's this second 60-day waiting period that we can, we can waive that, we can avoid that, which would speed up the approval process. My recommendation is to do that, and given the time frame, I will provide you with the necessary documents throughout the time, line in the milestone schedule to hit all of these dates to, get us to a point where we can formalize this approval at your April meeting. And we will have a bid process, go forward through this waiting period, so that will all be buttoned up. There's some plats of easement that need to be prepared and executed. Staff will get those done, within this waiting period, and so by hopefully April of this year, we will have a special service area created to help fund and pay for this project that will be both beneficial for two subdivisions and the village. And then we'll have a repayment schedule that will allow for those townhomes to pay the balance of the project. The village will contribute a portion of this project because there is some public benefit component. If you have any questions, staff here, I'm here to answer any questions. Otherwise, we'll move forward on that schedule in my memo.
Yeah, this project has been in the works for years.
Since 2016. It's been
Since
a long
2016.
road to this point. We're very close to, moving it forward.
Any questions on that?
Thank you. That's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I'll oh, yes, Trustee
There's
Sifferman.
another.
Oh,
And I would just like to take this opportunity to share a perspective on tonight's meeting and to recognize what I believe was an exercise in local government that was responsive to the overtures and concerns and the voices of the residents, and done in a very patient but receptive way that reflected the preparation that President Gallagher, Village Manager Velkme, and Attorney Jerusik in addressing issues that were brought to our attention regarding the 5G. And I would just want to make note of that. My perspective is one that appreciates being a member of this group, but also learning from the experiences and the preparation and patience that was exercised here this evening. And I want to make mention of that in this public forum.
well, thank you very much for saying that. And certainly, just to recap, we heard our residents' concerns and we will address them quickly. So, and more to come on that. But thank you, Trustee Sifferman. Any other? In that case, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'd make the motion to adjourn to next meeting.
Sorry.
You can second that one now.
Okay, second, if you made a motion,
All in
okay.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ladies and gentlemen, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.